Markets Now is brought to you by the 5-year anniversary of Brevant Seeds. Here's to 5 years of not just winning, but collecting one game-changing W after another. See all of our wins at Brevant.com/wins.
Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rook with Naomi Blohm of Total Farm Marketing. Well, it was a lower day over in livestock with some limited moves over in the feeder cattle futures, and we had a higher day in the grains. Nice rally led by the soybeans. And Naomi, let's start there because the push in soybeans is all about the hope that we are going to get a trade deal with China, although we don't have a lot of specifics, do we?
No, we don't. The word that we got was substantial on Sunday morning. Substantial purchases of soybeans is what we were told, and that was enough to get the market price to rally Sunday night and into Monday. But we stopped right at some key resistance areas on daily charts. And looking ahead towards the March contract was able to get to $11. But the significance is that this resistance area that these soybean prices are at was the high not only from right now, but back in June and also from back in February. So it's going to take some specific fundamental news to get the market to go through resistance. Otherwise, we might see a simple pullback of prices as the week goes on. And of course, we're waiting to see how things actually transpire with President Trump and President Xi later in the week.
What kind of soybean purchases do you think that we are going to need for this market to be able to push above those resistance areas? How much can China even buy at this point?
Yeah, we've been told that China needs 10 million metric tons of soybeans for December and January. Now, that equates to about 360 million bushels. That 360 million bushels is actually only about half of what China bought from us last year. So while if they buy that amount, absolutely it would be welcome for the marketplace and for cash basis levels, very much so. But as far as to get the market to go really substantially through $11, it would really be nice if China bought more than that. And then also we would need to see some bad weather starting to occur in South America during their growing cycle. Now, the beans in Brazil are just about 30% planted overall. And so we're starting to enter into their growing season to be weather watching down there. But the bigger issue right now that we're watching for, of course, is the trade deal confirmation and specific numbers out of China. That's what the market needs.
Yeah, and even if the presidents do sign a deal, even these frameworks that we've signed with a lot of other countries don't have a lot of specifics in terms of purchases, do they, Naomi?
No, they have been quite vague, and that's what's really challenging because, of course, with the government shut down, we're not getting the weekly export sales to know who is buying what and how much. But thankfully, we are getting the weekly export inspections report on Mondays. And for corn and soybeans both, the export inspections numbers have been actually pretty gosh darn good. Corn is ahead of projections. Beans are surprisingly doing well with a lot of our beans going towards Europe. And the wheat market also, wheat export inspections are up 20% from a year ago. So our grain is in demand. And we just don't know for sure how much of the future sales have been done while we're blindfolded here and the government shut down. We just can't see those specific numbers.
Yeah. I got to ask you specifically on China. China has not confirmed that President Xi and President Trump are actually going to meet on Thursday. So what is your gut telling you about whether we're going to get a deal signed actually?
Well, I'm hopeful. I think that there is a lot of hope there, but it also wouldn't surprise me if we see either President Trump or President Xi do something dramatic at the last minute because they like that attention and they like that flair. So I'm cautious. And so I feel like with beans at resistance levels on Monday's trade, if we don't see any fresh news, we'll probably see the market pull back a little bit as the week goes on. And I'm definitely expecting some sort of drama to happen between those two. But the hope is definitely there. And if they can collaborate, if they can meet, if we can get some specific data on the details of what China would be purchasing, that would be so beneficial for agriculture, obviously, and really be supportive to market prices as well.
So the corn market has been trying to follow soybeans. D's couldn't get above even 430 resistance today. If soybeans break out, will corn have no choice but to follow?
Yes, it will. And I feel actually I'm most fundamentally friendly to corn right now. I feel that the yield number needs to come down substantially. Obviously, we don't think that shows up on a USDA report probably at this point until December. But based on client conversations, I feel like the yield number needs to come down dramatically and probably get closer to like the 179 or 180 level just based on client conversations. So I feel that that is supportive. I also feel that our export demand is running ahead of schedule based on the export inspections data that we're seeing. And our weekly ethanol grind numbers are strong. They are on track to meet projections for the USDA. So corn, I feel, has some friendly support to it. And if we can get a technical story going, if we can get a further fundamental story going, it is going to be reason for the funds to exit the short positions that they still are sitting on. And we could see a nice technical rally in that corn market. But it's nickel increments for resistance all the way up to 450 on that December contract. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that and keeping an eye on, of course, trade talks as well.
For sure. You mentioned being maybe down to 180 for national yield, that combined with strong demand. Where does that put us for ending stocks? How much below 2 billion would it put us?
Well, I think it would probably get us closer to 1.8. And it could, of course, become a friendlier number than that, just depending on where the yield ends up. It's a big question mark, especially with the southern rust being such an issue in Iowa. We're hearing consistently that yield numbers are down there below last year, where the places where rust was significant. And then, of course, in other portions of the country, things are going just fine, and they're at their average level, with some portions of the Midwest above last year. So it's going to be a very interesting conversation point from here through December for the WASDs, USDA WASDs, and then, of course, the big January report will tell us the truth when all is said and done as well. But I'm actually quite friendly to corn. I feel like that has a lot of potential, and we just need to get some concrete numbers from the government before we can have a substantial rally.
Right. And I know you've said the greens all have to kind of go together if they rally. So wheat, is it just following right now? Is this just fund short covering with the up move that we've seen?
Yeah, wheat is seeing short covering by the funds. That's been part of it, but also technical buying. When you look at the wheat chart, wheat is cheap. And if you look at a continuous monthly chart that goes back about 20 years, last week, wheat had tested major support on a 20-year chart of an uptrend line. So we're seeing the bargain buyers come in. And I thought it was interesting that with the continuous flare-up that's been happening with Ukraine and Russia, Sweden nearby there was a story about Sweden about a week ago that said they started to stockpile grains because they just don't know what's going to transpire with Ukraine and Russia. And I feel like with the value of wheat being so cheap around the world, other countries may follow suit just to get through winter and early spring in case there is additional issues with Russia and Ukraine. Of course, President Trump had put additional not tariffs. I'm struggling on the word. So sorry about that. But they had put sanctions. Thank you. Yep. So President Trump had put additional sanctions on Russia just recently. And that might be something that could affect the wheat market further. And it could bring more demand for wheat exports to the United States on that uncertainty. So wheat has some potential to rally. There's maybe some little ripples of fundamental story and friendliness occurring there that's friendly. And I heard that it's getting a little bit chillier in portions of Argentina, and some of the wheat crop there could be at risk. So I'm keeping an eye on wheat, and I feel like it could be a market that, from a technical perspective, could just burst about 20 to 30 cents higher yet. But we, again, keeping an eye on all the daily news that comes across.
And it was an ugly day in the cattle market. We've been saying that a lot here lately, with some limit down moves in the feeders once again. And a lot of this has been in reaction to USDA and the government saying they're going to try to lower beef prices, right?
That's what this has been. So just that news of the government starting to intervene was enough for the funds to say, okay, we're gonna start to exit our long positions, because even though we're not going to have immediate relief of a larger herd or more production, just the perception that something is going to be getting done to make the herd size increase, or to increase production, or to increase imports, was just enough to start the technical sell-off. So we saw a lot of technical selling. We saw a lot of people who had been waiting for some kind of fundamental news piece to come in before they jumped in as sellers and aggressive hedgers. All of these things have come together.
Funds are liquidating. How much lower will they take this thing?
The December cattle market today finished below the 100-day moving average. almost limit down, and the feeder cattle finishing limit down on expanded limits. November feeder is now sitting on the 100-day moving average. It's going to be a very interesting finish to the week. Is there going to be any kind of a recovery bounce from here, or is it just going to be a continued sell-off? And that's what's a question mark. But I would say this, if there is a recovery bounce, it's probably going to be a hedging opportunity, because the perception now is that there's going to be something to make this herd expand. And also, we had heard that some people from Mexico are going to be coming to Washington, D.C. this week to talk to Secretary Rollins about potentially getting that border open with Mexico. So all sorts of news to watch this week, primarily stemming, of course, from trade deals, border negotiations. So it's going to be a volatile week for agriculture. Just be ready for anything.
I think Brazil is like our largest beef importer. So the news that maybe the tariffs could come down, that certainly was a big factor in today's down move. Do you think?
Oh, absolutely. It just opens again the door for more meat to come into the country and helps to alleviate the prices. And President Trump, he gave a warning shot a few weeks ago. He said he was aware of the high beef prices and that they were going to start to do something about it. And that news a few weeks ago made the market kind of spook a little bit. But it was when he said specifically with the Argentina beef coming in and with the point plan from the USDA coming out that they're serious and they're going to be doing something about this.
For sure. So milk futures had a big move last week over $1. We're up again today. What's going on in the milk market right now?
Yeah, it comes down to better cheese prices and some firmer butter values that have been out there. So the milk market had been oversold from a technical perspective. It had tested some recent lows and some bargain buying came in. Cheese demand really hot, of course, heading into the holiday season, which has been supportive to the milk futures as well. And a nice dollar rally has been definitely welcomed from the milk producers for sure.
Well, it's nice to see some green on the livestock board when everything else was down today, for sure.
Yep, you bet.
Yep. All right. Thanks so much, Naomi Blohm with Total Farm Marketing. That is Markets Now.
You were right.
You were right.
You were right.
Well, you were right.
When you choose your seed brand, there's winning, and then there's...
You were right. Should have gone with Brevant seeds.
When you choose Brevant seeds, you don't just win, you get to be right. Don't just win, win. Talk with your retailer or visit Brevant.com/win to get started.